So I will open the hearing on House Bill 1391. Chairperson Ricciardi will be with us shortly, but still executing over in Commerce. So we're going to get started, and I'd like to call up the prime sponsor, Representative Coker. Welcome.
Right. Well, thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I appreciate it. And thank you, members of the committee. So House Bill 1391 is a bill that allows new vehicles to be inspected in the second year after purchase. So just for a quick reference point, I was born in March. So if I were to buy a car in March of 2024, first time I need to get inspected is in 2026. So that would be, I would skip 25 and go into 2026. So birthdays are pretty important because our registrations need to be renewed on our birthdays. That's the way that New Hampshire's been doing it. And that's kind of how it works. So depending on, in my situation, I bought a brand new Ford Explorer back in, I think it was September or October. So if you buy a new vehicle and you're within a few months of your birthday, I think it's 4 months, you basically get an inspection sticker that's good for about 16 months. In my case, I got an inspection sticker that was lasted till March. So that was about 7 months. So looking into this, I'm like, you know, the genesis of this bill came from somebody. He's actually a guy in town. He doesn't really like me very much. He always kind of follows me around on Facebook and, you know, throws things at me. And he was like, listen, why do I have to get a brand new car inspected like right after I buy it? Like, that's ludicrous. And I was like, kind of listened to it a little bit, and I started doing some research, and I'm like, yeah, this doesn't really make a lot of sense. So that's the genesis of the bill from my side. So doing some research into this, obviously the primary reason for the inspection program is safety. So I was like, well, there's got to be some kind of safety related, you know, there's got to be data that shows that inspections actually improve the safety. But when I started digging into things, I've actually found there really wasn't a lot of information or studies on periodic inspections relating to the safety of basically the roadways. So what I found, which was kind of a cool little, it was a little wealth of information, is this GAO report 15705. It was published in 2015. I'll send it out an email to the committee this afternoon. And you know, this is the most recent data I could find. And basically what it did is it looked into all these studies done, some of them in like Norway, some of them all over the place. And it found that there really isn't a correlation between the data and improved safety metrics and vehicle inspections, periodic vehicle inspections. So I looked at that, thought about brand new cars, and thought this would be a pretty good way for our state to kind of dip our feet in the water and see what it looks like, and see if we could reduce the burden on New Hampshire taxpayers while maintaining the safety on our roads. And when I talk about the burden to the New Hampshire taxpayers, this bill originally as drafted is going to save consumers, the New Hampshire taxpayers, about $4.1 million a year is what they are going to. This would reduce the amount of inspections to the point where the consumers would save $4.1 million a year. And more importantly to me and a lot of people is the time. You know, an inspection is $50. That's not great, but you know, for me, I had to come in on a day off. I don't have, between the legislator and my real job, I don't have a lot of time off. So I had to go into the dealership, sit for 30 minutes and wait for my brand new vehicle that's 7 months old to get inspected. So I was like, this has got to be fixed. So what I thought was really interesting in this is basically, if you go through this GAO report, the Government Accountability Report that was done for a senator, pretty much they look into it, and a lot of the directors of safety and stuff and in a lot of states said, oh yeah, you know, intuitively periodic inspections improve safety, but you know, we just don't have the data. And when they looked at actually getting more data, basically the Department of Transportation was like, listen, only 2% of accidents have really a component failure as the primary cause. So we're looking at a sliver of the accidents that are caused. And it's not even worth studying this anymore because it's like, it just has so little effect. So my bill, again, only applies to brand new vehicles. It doesn't apply to all vehicles. And I believe it's not going to have an impact to safety on the roads. This is a small step that we can take to reduce the burden. If we're going to ask people to do something, we need to have a good reason to ask them. And I think asking people of brand new cars to come in 7 months after they buy their car to get it inspected, that's just not something we should be doing. The government we really should only, I guess, dictate to somebody that they need to do something if it's really going to have an effect. And I just couldn't see it having an effect. And you're going to hear a lot of anecdotes like, oh, I saw this, I saw that. Well, I've had anecdotes too. There was a newspaper article that came out, and it was kind of funny because the guy who did the interview kept on asking me, he's like, oh, is this because of unscrupulous mechanic shops and blah, blah, blah. And he kept on asking me 3 or 4 times. And I kind of, the intent of this was never because I think shops are untrustworthy or not honest. The intent of this was like, it just doesn't make sense to get brand new vehicles inspected. And so after that, eventually I said, well, I've heard anecdotes of, the unscrupulous repair shops. And of course that made it in the article because that's kind of where he wanted to go on it. And I got some feedback from that. And it was funny because a lot of these master technicians and the guys who reach out to me kind of upset about that one little comment. I said, well, hey, I get that. That's not exactly what I meant. I learned a little lesson. I'm a freshman, so I learned a lesson about talking to the press a little bit. But I said, what do you think about the bill itself? And they said, yeah, new inspections on new vehicles are redundant. So, I think this strikes a very good compromise. Some problems with it is having the inspection tied to your registration ends up on the birthday. So there's no real easy way to figure that out because I would love the bill just to go to 24 months. But without decoupling the inspections from the registration, you can't just set a hard time because it's based on the birthday, which I think is kind of, I don't know. I mean, I see some of the benefits to having it coupled to the birthday, but I don't think it's necessary. So, one of the issues with the bill is this does go over 24 months as written, but we could easily fix that by decoupling the inspection process from the registration. And we have language from that from previous bills. And I didn't see a fiscal note on that, so I don't think it's going to cost, there's not going to be a fiscal cost to that. Another issue with it that, another issue we ran into, the DES had some issues with if we backslide on because part of the annual inspections is based on the emissions testing. So if we backslide on that, we have to make it up in other places. But we talked to the DES, and this bill, even as written now, would have such a minimal effect. There might not even be we might not have to make it up, but we made it so that the timeline of the, one of the things that we can improve on this bill is we can make it so that basically it's contingent on the DES getting their information. So there's a lot of things that there's a couple things that we can tweak with this, but I think overall this is a smart step. It's a little tiny step, and we would be able to see in the data pretty quickly if there's going to be any kind of issues. So that's about all I got.
Any questions from members of the committee? Yes, Senator Tender.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative, for taking my question. So when it's an individual that buys a brand new car, it's their birth date.
Yeah.
Okay, so we all know that. What if it's a company that's, let's say Hertz?
Yeah.
What month do they use?
They get like assigned a month from what I understand. So they kind of get and then that was to even out inspections over the year. They didn't want to lump them into one thing. But from what I've heard, that actually vehicle sales are pretty spread out. So that's not really much of an issue.
So each organization would
be assigned a month. Yeah.
Okay.
What I would suggest is like basically we do it whenever you purchase it, that's it. And just kind of let the natural, how people are going to buy cars at different times of the year. So just let the natural, that would spread out naturally.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'd like to call Representative Ayo. And then Mike, I'll come to you. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Dan Bayou. I represent Hillsborough 34 in Amherst. Just a couple of comments about this bill. This is one of the biggest areas of contact that I have with constituents. It's really not a partisan issue. I get as many comments from Democrats as I do Republicans. They don't understand why we still have an inspection program here. It's a very small handful of states that still have any kind of safety inspection program. In fact, Rhode Island is one of the few that still has it, and they also exempt new vehicles for the first 2 years. Most of the states that have eliminated the inspection program have seen very little change in the safety statistics around the state. There's no real discernible increase in accidents or vehicle deaths related to component failures. New vehicles are the least likely to have serious issues. Older vehicles that have been subjected to climate and road conditions in our harsh climate are more likely to have it. But that's, if you're familiar with the quality of rust proofing in today's vehicles, it's going to be quite a ways down the road. It does affect wear items, and we all have to be responsible for our tires and our brakes and our windshield wipers. Those are things that rarely have, the courtesy to wear out on the day of your inspection. I just recently had a new vehicle that needed new tires, but it passed inspection just a couple months before. It was beyond the 230 seconds. So I had to go a couple other extra months, and I knew that was a safety issue, and I didn't have to wait until my next inspection to be told I had to change them. So most new vehicles, you tend to have a close relationship with your dealer because it's under warranty. I recently bought new Toyota and a new Honda that both came with regular scheduled service for free for 2 years. So you're going to take care of your new vehicle more than you will, say, an older vehicle. And I don't think anybody really wants to eliminate the program altogether, but this is kind of an easy decision to make. It helps alleviate some of those questions that we get on the common sense issue with this. So that's why I sign on to this and support and ask you to.
Well, thanks so much. Any questions from, yes, Senator?
Good afternoon. Thank you for coming before us. You had mentioned about, not really needing inspections, and I definitely see value in what the representative said when you pay for your car to be inspected. And in our state, that should be good for a year, right? And then your birthday was 7 months later. Now you have to go back and pay. I definitely see value in that. And I bet there's a workable way around that, whether it's to give when you buy your car, you don't pay for the inspection, so that maybe when you come back 7 months or whatever, you pay for it then. I completely see value in that. But I have to tell you, I would never be able to support no inspections.
Right.
For the irony of it, I broke down on the side of the road today and had to call AAA. But even if a car is new, I want to read something, if I may. Beside the fact that inspections do reduce the costs of repairs and replacement, maximizing vehicles' values and extending the life, keeping the systems and safety equipment of your car in good condition can also help with catastrophic accidents. It doesn't just protect you. We talk about, well, you have to be responsible and it's on you. That's true, but we have to make sure the people around us, are safe. And the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration issued multiple recalls last week on new vehicles. And it said that it included notices for more than 380,000 Toyota Tacoma trucks and more than 300,000 Jeep Grand Cherokee SUVs for increased crash risks. And it goes down. So I think that not having inspections would not be very prudent. Working with some of the issues around it, I could understand that. But I mean, I did want to address that.
Right. As far as the recalls, if you have a new vehicle, you're going to go in regularly for your oil changes because you don't want to void your warranty. And almost every time you go in, they're going to check for recalls. And I recently had a recall on a 2021 Toyota that I purchased and brought it in for the recall. And I was told there was no corrective action they could take at this time. It was under review. So on a new vehicle, you don't always have even though there is a recall, there's not always a corrective action that's available right away. And it's going to, if there is, probably going to be found at the regular service. That, you know, you're not going to skip too many oil changes in a brand new vehicle. And that the question on the safety correct for other people as well. It's when people first started approaching me and saying that, you know, why do we have this? All these states have no inspections, and it's not affecting their accident rates at all. And I argued the same points you are. Hey, this helps protect everybody else. You know, it keeps people from driving on bald tires. But then if you do look at the statistics, you know, aggravatingly, you know, I had to admit that I was wrong, and that these states aren't showing any discernible increase in safety related accidents due to the lack of inspections.
Any other questions from the committee? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I'm going to call up Mike Fitzgerald because it has another meeting pretty soon. Then I'll come back if there's any further representatives here. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and appreciate the indulgence. Mike Fitzgerald, I'm the Assistant Director of the Air Resources Division at the Department of Environmental Services. We're the agency that's responsible for the emissions part of the inspection, the OBD light, the check engine light in your vehicle that gets checked. When you conduct the inspection, we work closely with the Department of Safety. My comments today are related only to the emissions portion of the inspection, not the safety inspection. Again, we've taken no particular position on this bill. I think Representative Coker, sponsor, characterized the situation rather fairly, that we do have an issue with the emissions inspection is ensconced in our state implementation plan. I've sent you a letter. We sent a letter from the commissioner yesterday to the committee explaining all of this. I have talked about it on a couple of other bills, but basically we're required under the Clean Air Act to submit a state implementation plan to EPA, and that plan incorporates all the rules and statutes and so on that are used to reduce emissions in the state, and those then become federally enforceable under the Clean Air Act. And so the issue that we had with this bill when it was first presented, again, Representative Coker characterized it rather fairly in terms of the amount of emissions reductions. We suspect, although we haven't done the analysis, we suspect that they're relatively small. We would have to evaluate that, and then the Department of Safety, if this bill were to pass, would have to revise their rules, because those rules have the requirements for when safety inspections are done. And then we would have to submit those revised rules to the EPA and have them replaced in our SIP. That process can take anywhere up, just rulemaking, as you're maybe aware, can take 6 to 12 months. Then it would take us a period of time to negotiate, work with the EPA, determine if there were emissions reductions that would have to be replaced and where those would come from. And so we had asked in the House that if there were a bill to pass, that at least the effective date were to change such that we could conduct that process with the EPA and not have us out of compliance with the Clean Air Act through that period. I'm aware we have participated in some discussions with regard to an amendment. I understand there may be one brought forth later today, and some of the language in that, the last version that I saw of that seemed to address our concerns, and we're willing to participate in any further discussions, but we certainly need to have that time in order to make the evaluation, get the rules changed, submit this to EPA, and get that in there. So we would ask that the effective date be upon approval of the EPA of a SIP revision relative to this particular topic. And so with that, I'd be happy to take any questions. And again, I appreciate the opportunity to cut the line. And
Sophie, do we have copies of that letter? I don't know. To whom did you send it, Mike?
that was sent to the committee
I
yesterday
just haven't
afternoon
seen
from
it
the
yet.
commissioner. So I will.
Maybe we'll get it.
I'll check. And Jess, do you have a copy? Could you give it to the clerk? And so I would also just note very quickly that the emissions testing program that we have is a compromise that was struck by then Representative Jeb Bradley back
We
in
can
the
get copies for everybody.
back in the late 90s, and I have a copy of a letter actually from EPA that I can share. That was sent by EPA to Representative Bradley then, outlining this compromise. And so the program that we have is already a compromise with EPA, and changes to it. Again, we don't think this one would be substantial and cause too much of a problem, but we certainly need to work with them closely on it.
Any questions from the members of the committee? You know, and Mike, let me just say, I appreciate how much DES has tried to work through some of the issues involved, but it is complicated.
Yes, it is. Yes, we appreciate your consideration on this.
Thank you.
Thank you. And my associate, I do have to leave, but my associate Jessica Wilcox is here if there are further questions on this issue.
And Reverend St. Clair, you didn't sign up that you wanted to speak, but you do want to speak? Okay, please come up. Sorry, I didn't see that. It wasn't here, and so here you go. Thank you very much.
Can you turn your mic on?
Sorry, but I should know better. Thank you. I said District 5, Laconia. Thank you. I'm obviously very much in support of this bill because it's something, unlike you, Senator, I think we probably don't need inspections. The emissions I'm a big favor of, but the inspections, watching how it works in 30 plus other states around the country, and the fact that we allow all those cars to come into our state on a regular basis without seeming to have too much carnage on the road because of that, makes me wonder about the necessity. The other thing I remember, which some of you may not, is when the state of New Hampshire required to have inspection every 6 months. Every 6 months you had to bring your car in and get it inspected. And I remember when that law was changed, I wasn't attending the hearings, but I was reading newspapers then. And a lot of the complaints that you're going to hear during this meeting or hearing were the same complaints you're hearing today. The threat of destruction, unsafe vehicles, the whole 9 yards. And you're going to hear all that today. But I want to just speak to the high mileage concern on new vehicles. As you know, you have warranty on these new vehicles. And you bring them in, you reach a certain mileage and you're going to bring them in and they're going to do all the checks in it. And I think that was already covered. You're also probably going to hear about rental cars knocking up high mileage. I might remind you also that a good part of the rental cars we have in this state are registered in other states. They're not New Hampshire plates. Quite often they'll be from states that don't have inspection, yet those cars are operating in our state out of our rental agencies. The other thing you're going to hear about, may have already been mentioned, is weather conditions. There are some people that seem to think that New Hampshire has a unique weather system here, or weather pattern, especially in the winter. And it's awful how much salt we use here. But that also goes on in other states where there are currently no inspections, not just one for brand new cars, or not having one for brand new cars. So I hope you'll keep all that in consideration when you discuss this bill. And I really, really hope you'll consider the vast majority of our constituents who are in support of this bill. I wish we could put it on a ballot, but we can't, because I feel quite confident how that would go. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions?
Representative, thank you for the question, or thank you for being here and thank you for the question. Do any other New England states do other New England states not have a state inspection program?
Connecticut doesn't.
Connecticut does not.
Does not. I'm not sure about that. I know Massachusetts does, and they all have their little quirks on them, but I know Connecticut doesn't.
Follow up, Madam Chair. I just want to, I want to be careful because I know a state like Florida doesn't have a state inspection program. However, I think you would agree that the climates are very different in Florida than New Hampshire. Would you agree to that?
I would, except if you live near the coast and the damage from salt is incredible.
Probably no frost heaves in Florida, though, right?
No, just holes. And if I may say that, if you want to talk about comparable states, I would look at Iowa, Colorado, the Dakotas. They certainly have winters like we do. And I know there are other states maybe should have had a list, but there's many states that have weather the same as we do. If in fact not even crazier with the swings that they get. Thank you.
I have a question. Thank you. So when you're, as we're assessing and deciding on this type of legislation, has any account or thought been given to the electric vehicles? They're becoming more advanced, they're heavier on the road. If they hit something, it can, jar the battery, and the tires are wear quicker because the vehicle is so heavy. And also, even on traditional cars, they're making the tires thinner, just like, nothing we buy anymore is like what we bought years ago. Was there any consideration taken into those issues?
I can't speak to the consideration that came from my colleagues on this, but I will tell you that my experience has been that if you're pulled over with regards to tires, normally, again, my experience has been in talking to law enforcement people, normally when they pull somebody over for a taillight, let's say, or any other reason, they quite often do a once-over looking at tires because it's such an obvious potential infraction, a tire that's way down. You take your car in to get an oil change, they're trying to upsell. You take your car in to get the wipers fixed, they're going to upsell you. That's the business. I mean, it's, for a lot of people, this is their business, is how they make their money, and I get that. I think some of the people, I'm not going to speak for anybody in the room, but I've had a few garages tell me that without inspections, they lose quite a bit of their income over the course of the year. And I understand that too. But there has to be a balance here on I think, common sense with regards to forcing people with a brand new vehicle to be coming in on such short notice, as Representative Coker said, and you agree with apparently, after a few months because it's your birth date. I don't know what the answer to that is, but it's something to look at. But I don't, electric cars, that's a whole new animal to me. And I would hope that everybody's looking at those different potential problems.
Thank you very much.
And I thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. Thanks so much for coming in. I don't think we have any more reps. Okay, so we've got quite a few folks who want to speak, so I'll just start going down the list. So we have Dan Bennett.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the Senate Transportation Committee. My name is Dan Bennett with the New Hampshire Auto Dealers Association. As you know, we're a trade group for the motor vehicle industry, about 500 businesses, about 14,000 employees, all over the state of New Hampshire, car, truck, motorcycle, snowmobile, ATV, construction, and farm equipment dealers. I'm going to do my best to be brief, although this is a highly complex issue that we've been steeped in for many years. I know there are a bunch of folks in the back of the room that are here to speak as well. And I would say defer to them on a lot of issues because they truly are the industry experts. They're not anecdotes. They're folks who do this every day. They're elbows deep in that work. So I did hand out some information, and I'll refer to a couple of the handouts as we go. So I'm glad to see that everybody have it. First off, this is not about new cars. New cars are vehicles that roll off the carrier straight from the OEM, the manufacturer in Detroit or Subaru in Indiana. These are cars that are 24, 30, 36 months into their life. The handout that we have shows you what we kind of call, the bad, worse, and worse scenarios when you buy a vehicle, how this could happen. 24 months, 2 years. In that situation. This bill is tied to model year. Model year is different. In the old days, in September, the new model had a tarp over it in the showroom and you did this big reveal. But that's not how it works anymore. Model year vehicles are rolled off as they come on a rolling basis. I can go buy a 2025 Harley Davidson or Ford Mustang Mach-E right now if I wanted to. It's a rolling basis. So these vehicles could come at any point during the year. So I just want to make that point real quick that it's not about new cars. There's a lot of roadway safety advocates that oppose this bill and others like it to weaken and repeal the safety inspection program. So I'd like to point to some of the things on the handout. It's a significant weakening of the program. And then there's practical just implications in it. The way the bill as written, Department of Safety, law enforcement, state troopers, local law enforcement, they don't have model vehicle years memorized in their head, nor do they know drivers' birthdays. So there's no way to tell whether the vehicle is allowed to be on the road or not to be allowed to be on the road. So the option there is pull over everybody or pull over nobody. And neither of those are good solutions. We've heard on this issue in the past, and you may hear it from folks behind me, that the data says that there's a really low failure rate. That data is significantly flawed, and both the shops that do this work day in, day out, the true experts, as well as the DMV and Department of Safety, you'll say that those data points are not reflective of what actual reality is. Because when Danny brings his car in to get inspected and my tires fail, my trusted local mechanic calls me and says, Dan, you need new tires. And I say, yes, please, go ahead. And they don't fail me and then pass me. They just put the tires on and pass me. So that failure data rate that's used in this discussion is significantly underreported and not very reflective. As mentioned, the 24 to 36 months is far too long. We have a fleet of vehicles. We've got about 12 in them. This morning, I asked our accountant bookkeeper to run through some of the annual mileages. So for 2023, from January to December, a couple of our cars are as follows: 19,000 miles, 23,000 miles, 20,000 miles, 23,000 miles, 33,000 miles, 24,000, 23, and one, because he lives in Kittery, Maine, does 40,000 miles a year. So those are high mileage vehicles, and that's just in 1 year. And these are folks who just only travel in New Hampshire, visiting dealerships, conducting safety inspections, discussing health insurance. So they're not long haul truckers. They're, day-to-day employees and citizens here. So I want to mention that kind of time frame. Mr. Fitzgerald is an expert on the EPA, the historical negotiation, and he mentioned the difficulty with the SIP. But it's also our opinion is that, if you modify the SIP, the EPA may not necessarily just give these cars a free pass, right? Emissions reductions are a piece of a pie where everybody gives up a little bit. And if new cars get a free pass, who's going to pick up that slack? Is it the truckers, the power plants, the manufacturers? I'm sure, I would assume the EPA would want a little bit of a pound of flesh. So it's almost like we don't know what they're going to do. So it's a shoot first and then aim second approach. And that's not really the best way to write this policy. We heard about the neighboring states from Representative St. Clair. I appreciate his opinion. But if you all will look to page 2 of the handout, what I have for you is a winter severity map. And it shows, there's a chart on the left, the varying degrees, the red down bottom, being nuclear red. And if you look at New England as a microclimate, that's where we're at. Some of those other states that were mentioned, Iowa, North Dakota, Minnesota, they're in blue, trending a little bit purple. That's right in the middle of the scale. Well, New Hampshire and New England, our little microclimate, is in that bright red in that right corner. So, this shows that our roads and our winter severity are worse than other states. It's an apples to oranges comparison to say that there's 30 other states. This map is indicative of that. A lot of other states don't spray liquid salt water on their roads that then gets on the undercarriage of cars and erodes metal and cable and hoses. So our geographics are unique. The sponsor talked about a GAO study, but there's a lot of other studies that contradict exactly what he said. The PennDOT, the Penn DOT did a study that said inspections play a significant role in saving lives. The Pennsylvania program estimates that the number of fatal crashes in a year was down by 115 to 169, saving 127 to 187 lives. So folks would say one life is too many. This program has proven facts that it saves lives. The Institute for Public Research and the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration says mechanical defects and worn equipment on vehicles were a causative or aggregating factor in 12.6% of crashes in the United States. Over 850,000 accidents could have been avoided. So there's studies that show that routine vehicle maintenance and inspections do matter. There's a consumer impact. Vehicle cycles, oil changes are getting longer. So to let someone go 2+ years, they could in fact be out of warranty, which then means the manufacturer's not going to pay for it anymore. So they're going to go to their pocket. So it hurts the consumer that way. Senator Rishi already mentioned, preventative maintenance is a heck of a lot cheaper than catastrophic repair. It's why we see the dentist and the doctor once a year for that checkup. So that's important. And then there's a really important component about this annual safety check, and it's recalls. Every single time a New Hampshire citizen has their vehicle inspected, a safety recall check is done. A notice is put on the seat or handed to the customer that says, you have or don't have an open safety recall. The other way it's done through the manufacturer is a little postcard that comes in the mail, right? About this big, kind of looks like junk mail. If it's in the middle of election season, it gets mixed in with all the other ones that are in there and cluttered mailboxes. So this puts it right in front of the citizens, and it works. For the model year 22, in 2022, for model year 22, over 4,500 recall notices were distributed through the unit, and in 2023, for model year 2022, over 14,000 safety recall notices were handed to consumers. And in model year 23, there were 378 2022 model year vehicles that were distributed. And then last year, over 4,500 open safety recall notices on consumers' cars were handed to New Hampshire citizens. So I think that's a tremendous benefit. There's a fiscal note for you all to weigh in, and there were some questions on that that were mentioned by one of the providers. And then there's a couple other important flaws just to further expand on the fact that the bill is just, it's not ready, it's not workable. It talks about a licensed dealer, but a licensed dealer where? Is it just New Hampshire dealers? So then if we buy from a Mass or a Maine dealer, then we do have to get inspected annually, or we don't get it inspected annually. We got to go 2 years. So that's it. There's an equity in new cars versus private sales, which do happen in the first 2 years of a vehicle's life. So dealers don't have to inspect, but customers do. And then there's a thing about a corporation sticker expiring on a sales anniversary. Well, that's not when corporations register their cars. Corporations register their cars based on the name of the corporation and a chunk of the alphabet. So just to point to a ton of flaws with this bill as written. You've heard me say it before. The annual inspection program works. It works for New Hampshire. It's right for us. And if there are problems, as we've done in the past, we attack it with a scalpel, not a hatchet. This bill is a really large hatchet, wiping out a bunch of the program. And as we mentioned last week with Senator Ricciardi, we're not opposed to discussing and working on and looking at solutions that can accommodate certain people or sectors, but this blanket statewide citizen impact is not a good approach. It should be taken very, very slowly. As a driver, as a road user, I've got 2 boys that are about to be drivers in a month and a half. So I want to see safe roads, and we participate and help ensure in that. So if we are going to make some changes, again, scalpel, not hatchet, slow walk, thoughtful, detailed, research-based, stakeholder-based. The suggestion to move off the sale or move from to sale from birthday, well, that puts the registration and the inspection off cue. So the city and town clerks are the tax collectors, so they should be involved in that discussion too, because that's when that all happens. So there's a lot of folks, a lot of parts that really should have a say in this discussion. So I know that was a lot. Thank you for your time. I gave you all my handouts, and I'm pleased to take any questions now or anytime. You all have my contact information. So thank you.
Thank you. Questions, Senator?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Dan, for taking my question. It's probably because I'm feeling very simple-minded this afternoon, but in your handout, it says this bill is not about new cars. It was my impression that the bill was about new cars. So help me understand that.
This bill doesn't have a vehicle get its inspection until at least 24 months into its life cycle. A new car is something brand new, just built in Detroit or Dearborn, and it rolls into a dealership. That's brand new. 2 years old is a 2-year-old vehicle. It's not a new vehicle. So if this was a discussion about, well, right when the car rolled off the car carrier, that would be something very different. But a 2-year-old vehicle, I mean, ask the people that sell them. That's not a new vehicle. Not at all.
So can I follow up?
Yes, please do.
Thank you. So if I were to go to a dealership and the sticker said 2025, because I think you mentioned that, but somebody else had driven it, it still would not be considered a new vehicle?
Well, there's a component where it could depend on the mileage, and a lot of it also could depend on whether the vehicle has actually been titled or not. It's a different section of the law as opposed to inspection and registration. It deals with titling. Titling proves ownership. So, think of a quick scenario for you, Senator. I'm a dealer. I sell you a car after 3 months. You title it, register, inspect it. After 3 months, you trade it in because you decide you don't like it. It's too rough a ride on my way down to Concord as many days a week as you all do. And you trade it back in, and the dealership goes and then sells it back to the next customer sitting right next to you. That's a used vehicle. That's not a new vehicle. It's already been titled to Mrs. Gendro and owned, and there's a previous owner, and that title change will indicate that's not a brand new vehicle.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you for helping me clarify.
Thank you for the question.
Dan, would it be fair to say, in reference to the senator's question, that if you look on page 2, line 5, a vehicle purchased prior to or during the vehicle model year from a licensed dealer, so it could be a 25 model year, but you purchased it in 24, by a natural person as the first owner, should be exempt from inspection until the last day of the registered owner's birth month in the second year after purchase. So that's the basis of your statement, that it's not a new car necessarily, because of the duration there that might be involved.
Well, so I'm sorry, Senator. I'm not sure I follow the line that you're on.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
page,
that's the definitional thing that says you could buy something in 24 and not have to have it inspected until the end of 26.
Yes, because
seems
it's
to be
based
your
on the-
statement about it not being essentially technically a new car because of all the mileage that would be on it by the end of the 26 year.
yeah, and it's based on the vehicle's model year, so that enhances the time. And then that titling is what establishes ownership. So when there's a new owner, it's a previously titled vehicle, which is not brand new. Brand new is on a certificate of origin from the manufacturer.
Thank you. Just thought I'd clarify that. 'Cause
Thank
that
you.
seems to be where.
Mr. Chair. Thank you. Thank you for taking my question. I'm thinking about the Takata airbag recalls and how dangerous those were. I'm assuming the state inspection program caught a lot of those recalls. Is that what you're saying?
The recall notice that's done, it's automatic within the Gordon Darby system, which is the machine in which we use to emissions test and do our reporting. For every vehicle inspected in the state of New Hampshire, 1.4, whatever, it all receives an automatic vehicle identification, is a VIN, is a 17-digit number specific to every single car in the United States. It automatically does a check to see whether there's an open safety recall and gives that information to the consumer.
Thank you very much, Dan.
Thank you.
And next we have, is it Tracy, is it Bovage or? Did I get that right or not? Probably not. Yeah, well, welcome. Welcome to Senate Transportation.
Thank you
Tracy.
very much. it off. Now I'm on. Sorry. I thought it was green if it was. Thank you, Senator Ricciardi and committee for the opportunity to speak. So my first question is a clarification question. I'm the president of New Hampshire Motorcycle Rights. I also represent the motorcyclists on the New Hampshire Traffic and Highway Safety Commission, and I also chair the New Hampshire Motorcycle Safety Task Force. So I'm very involved heavily in the motorcycling community. We are unsure if we are a part of this, if we're a component. Under the statute or under the law in New Hampshire, motorcycles are considered a motor vehicle, and it does not exclude us if you look at what's excluded in this. So the first thing we would like to know is, are we included or not? Because we have been meeting about this, and we did not take a poll for me to ask everybody, but we have been talking about it. Our biggest concerns are the tires and the brakes on both motorcycles and cars. One of the things that you've heard talk about again is the recalls, what have you. I own commercial vehicles, not commercial, but I own a commercial company that has vehicles, trucks. They're not commercially registered. My guys can put upwards of 50,000 miles on a truck easily in less than a year. I just bought 2 brand new vehicles from Banks, as a matter of fact. And these guys are fabulous technicians. They do not check their brakes and they do not check their tires, and they don't know when that thing is squealing that they're supposed to go get their brakes checked. And you can have that on a brand new vehicle, like Dan Bennett had said, 6 or 7 or 8 months or 10 months, 12 months into a vehicle if you put a lot of mileage on it. What scares us as motorcyclists is I don't want to be on the road with vehicles that have a tire or a brake issue. I don't want to put my motorcycle on the road that may have a tire or a brake issue. So we just have concerns about how we're going about this and looking at it. And then, like I said, the bottom line is we'd like to know, are we a component of this or not?
Thank you. And my reading of the bill is that you would be, but is Janet here? Would your understanding be that motorcycles are not exempt?
I'm not sure, sir. I haven't read it that much.
Okay, we'll try to get, we don't answer questions because
No,
we might
that's
get the
fine.
wrong
No,
answers.
but I wanted to bring that
My
up
assumption
at the
reading
hearing.
bill, it says any vehicle,
Okay,
and you're not in the list of exempted, but I will try to with a later testimony, get that nailed down for you.
okay, thank you.
Okay. Any questions from members of the committee? And thank you so much for coming here.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We have Daniel Weed is next. Welcome, Daniel.
Good afternoon. Thank you.
You can turn the mic back on. Thank you.
Lit up like a Christmas tree. I'm sure you're going to hear today testimony from the rest of the folks about brakes, tires, stuff like that. First, I'd like to point out, he talked about savings to his constituents and whatnot, but the reality is the number that he has in here of 82,713 vehicles in 2023. If you take a look at that financially, $50 per constituent, multiply that number times average of $40 to $50 per inspection, you're now taking away $3 to $4 million away from your businesses. All right, that then turns around and translates into business income tax. So how has that been affected? So something to consider. I know many other shops around the country that don't have inspection programs. And I can tell you that their average repair ticket is 2 to 3 times as high as what ours is here in New Hampshire. So, on one end, you're saving money. On the other end, with that emergency or reactive repair, it costs you even more money. We have at our shop personally seen a situation where a customer has declined repairs, gotten into an accident because of those declined repairs, and the insurance company didn't pay for the claim. So I think there's a much bigger and broader financial impact to the constituents and your businesses that support everybody by taking away, even 2 model years. We can talk about mileage, we can talk about tires, but at the end of the day, if we're looking at dollars and cents, let's look at the real numbers here.
Thank you. Any questions from members of the committee? Helpful, very helpful. Thank you for
Thank
being
you.
here. And Dave DuPont, good to see you. Come on up.
Thank you for your service and time today. My name is David DuPont, and I own and operate an auto repair shop in Dover, New Hampshire for 45 years. I started servicing cars when I was 13 at my dad's gas station, along with my brother Ed DuPont, who I'm sure that some of you knew for his service here in Concord. Although I sold the business last year and have no financial interest in the automotive service industry right now, I felt compelled to be here today to talk to you about this proposed change. As a technician and owner who has sold thousands of tires throughout his career, I think this change in the inspection laws is unsafe. Today's vehicles have high performance and four-season tires on them that are high traction, and as such, they just don't last long. We just heard testimony from the women with the motorcycle issues, and a lot of those super bikes, those rear tires only last 7,000 or 8,000 miles. Tires on cars are not just limited to high-performance sports cars and sedans. These high-performance tires are also on many minivans, and they're certainly on electric vehicles. And the weight and torque of those vehicles, they're very, very, very tough on tires. As new vehicle option packages have changed, most of them include alloy wheels with large diameter and low-profile tires. So these types of tires are commonplace on vehicles today. Also, a significant portion of these tires are not all season, and they can be worn out after 2 years of approximately 25,000 miles of driving, making them unsafe for our four-season driving in New Hampshire. This issue has become an even greater problem for under-maintained vehicles as owners ignore tire pressure warning lights or on vehicles not equipped with tire pressure monitoring systems, as low pressure in tires generates high heat, and that reduces tire tread life dramatically. We've all hopped on a bicycle with low tires and saw how difficult it was to pedal. Our present inspection program has high consumer acceptance, allows safety compliance without law enforcement involvement, and is supported by the Department of Safety. It appears unclear whether or not DES might even be able to support it based on a DEH decision. It's the best deal on Main Street if you can get your local car dealer or independent service facility to have a skilled technician perform a comprehensive check on your vehicles for $50. In no industry can you get that done on a device as complicated as a modern vehicle. This check also allows the consumer to be notified on non-safety related issues on their vehicle, most of which are manufactured recommended services that, if not performed, could cost the consumer a lot more repairs, as Dan pointed out. This would certainly offset any additional inspection costs, which right now we're talking about $50. Leaving the current program in place is not too much government, and it makes economic and safety sense. On a couple of notes that are apparent to me, New Hampshire, one reason why the data looks so good is we do have one of the safest fleets in the country because of the inspection program. I know a gentleman testified that he needed tire replacement, and he had it done after a couple of months he had his car inspected. Would he have known that he needed those tires if his car wasn't inspected? And the recall notices are really important, because I can tell you, as the guy that used to hand them out, or when my office staff handed out, people would say, oh yeah, I got the card in the mail, but I didn't know if it was important. I didn't know if it was going to cost me money. What does that even mean, that I have an airbag notice on my car? Oh, I already got one of those, and I already had it done. Well, there were multiple Takata recall campaigns on airport calls, on multiple front and side airbags. There are sometimes they just don't, they treat the recalls like garbage, and they have an opportunity to discuss those with a knowledgeable service advisor or with a knowledgeable technician, so they can understand what they mean and get those safety and emission recalls performed, which I think is another really important thing that this does. So again, thank you for your time today. And if you have any questions for someone in the trenches, I'll gladly answer them.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave. Good to see you. Tim Jordan. Welcome. Thanks for your patience.
Thank you, Chair and Committee.
We're getting there.
My name's Timothy Jordan. I'm opposed of the bill. Just a couple of things. Dan did a great job. They've done a great job going over a lot of the stuff. But real world, we keep using the term new vehicle. These vehicles, technically, when they roll out of the car, they're new vehicle. But we're talking 27 months later in some cases, maybe longer. I mean, if somebody's putting 18, 20,000 miles a year on their car, I mean, you're talking 40, 50,000 miles before they're getting a sticker. That's not a new car. That is not a car that, shouldn't be inspected. These vehicles these days with all the SUVs that are all-wheel drive, electric vehicles, hybrid vehicles, really tough on tires. Tires don't last what they used to. Even 5, 10 years ago, I mean, we're seeing tire replacements in the 25, 30,000 miles is pretty common for these new vehicles. So, I mean, these cars that if we're stretching them out 40, 50,000 miles for their first inspection, these people may not know that they have, bad tires on these things. So this is just something that I just think we're going too far. I see it every day, cars that, and I don't know if this is really driven by financial burden and time. I mean, we all have to do stuff. I mean, if you have to go once a year to get your car inspected and you have a $50 to get it done, there's times where I get customers in that, 2 years later, they're out of their base warranty of 36,000 miles. So, I mean, that $50 that, you may have spent a few months before to get a sticker, they may have found something that could have been a $5, $6, $7, $12, $1,400 repair that would have been covered under your warranty. Now you're out of your pocket. So, I mean, that kind of goes on to that other end of that, if this is a financial burden on the, on people for $50. And these people are people that are buying new cars. New cars aren't cheap. So, I mean, I think that in the first year, I think $50 is not a lot to ask. But I mean, overall safety, I mean, I think it's really important. I mean, I see cars on the road that, come in and people just don't have a clue, that there's things wrong with their car. And if we're stretching this out, I just feel that these cars aren't as safe as they should be. Everybody has data and statistics, and all data and statistics can be swayed either way. So I mean, this is kind of real world, what we see every day, day in, day out. I mean, you can hear statistics on, I know, one of the rental companies says that they have a less than 1% failure after a year. But those cars, a rent-a-car, they put a lot of miles on a year, and that rent-a-car, when you rent a car, they look at that car with you before you leave. They look at everything around, make sure there's not damaged bumpers that are a safety issue, cracked lights. They take a look at tires. They walk around that car with you. When you drop it off, they do the same thing. So I mean, if they rent that car twice a week, that car is inspected how many times? 200 times a year by a professional, one of their trained employees that's looking at that stuff. So, when they come down and say, hey, we only had a 1% failure rate, I mean, that means that anything they looked at throughout that 2-year period or 1-year period was probably fixed if they found something. So when they have data like that, I'm just using this as a data example, if they have data like that, the only data that would really make that solid data is that if you saw every repair done on that car in that time, because if that went 50,000 miles and they fixed those things all along when they went to get their sticker, probably the only thing they're going to need is maybe a chip in a windshield because everything else should have been looked at. But most of us don't get our cars looked at 50, 100, 200 times a year. So I think that, just some of that data is, when you listen to us, like, wow, that's great data. But I just think real world, we are, can't stretch it out any further. I mean, yeah, there's other states around us that don't have it, but most of the states in New England actually have a inspection program. So I'm not going to go too much deeper into it, but I just, that's it. I don't know if you have any questions.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions? Yes, Senator Chandra.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Tim, for taking my question. Thank you for your testimony. I'm just curious, too, as far as with the insurance companies, because I'm thinking about my own hometown insurance company, and if they knew that I was driving a vehicle that was only inspected twice or once every 2 years, what would the rates go up? Would that be affected? Have they been?
That's a good question. I mean, that's a possibility. I mean, and that comes down to insurance data. When they say that amount of accidents, if you think about when you get an accident, if you have a fender bender and you swap information and leave with that, that's never reported. And you could have had bald tires that caused that accident. That's data that just never gets reported. So, I mean, that's just...
Yeah, thank you. I'm just wondering if
Yeah.
they've been consulted on this and what their reaction.
No, it's very, very good. Very good thought. I don't have an answer for that.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you for your time.
And we have Alicia Brinson next. And welcome to Senate Transportation. Good to see you, and you could turn the mic back on, please.
Sorry, I think I brought more than I could carry. So I just wanted to start off with an introduction. My name is Alicia. I am the service manager at New Car Auto Mall in Tilton, New Hampshire. I actually was formerly a licensed inspector, so I do know there is some personal segue in this matter for me, but also professional too as well. I did want to touch upon some things that were discussed prior. I know there were some questions before about the annual inspection schedule based off essentially vehicles that aren't owned by consumers or citizens. I know Dan touched upon this too as well, but it is categorized by the letter of the name of the corporation, company, etc. Also, just wanted to discuss what items we are checking in the inspection. So to start off, registration plates. I know this hasn't been discussed, but even thinking about it, I actually had a delaminating license plate that I tried to put on my brand new 2024 Volkswagen Atlas. Didn't even think about it. My numbers were 442-5155, and you couldn't make out the 442. If I was allowed to put those plates on my vehicle, I would have driven around with my 2024 Atlas for about 2 to 3 years with delaminating plates. If I ever decide to drive recklessly, that would be very inconvenient for the officer to try to pull my plates and understand who he's pulling over. So I just wanted to segue into also plate covers too as well. That is part of the state inspection process. So technicians will essentially remove tinted plates and make note of that, put them on the passenger seat, things of that nature. If you could imagine 2 to 3 years of ownership where people are driving around with tinted license plates, that would obviously hinder a police officer's operation too as well. Furthermore, so other items that are checked are steering, suspension, brakes, odometer, speedometer, etc., electrical components, glass, wipers, exhaust systems, onboard diagnostic systems, body, chassis, bumpers, fuel system, tires, and wheels. All things that don't necessarily have grace depending on time and mileage. If you think about it, if I get in an accident and rear end somebody, I elect to not go through insurance or do anything about it. I have sharp edges. Somebody walks by, they catch their dress, or if a child walks by, somebody gets a scrape. These are all things that would be identified in the annual inspection, and I would be essentially held accountable to fix to get issued a sticker. Furthermore, so I actually did a personal scope of my own dealership state inspections for the past 2 or 3 years, and I identified a large pool of vehicles that did fail inspection for most oftentimes brakes, tires, and wiper blades most commonly. I do have a couple examples that I wanted to bring to your attention today that were actually hot topics in my mind, because they're actually some things that you probably wouldn't believe. An example that stands out the most, we had a 2024 Kia Telluride that we sold at 823 miles. They came back for their state inspection. It looks like, unfortunately, they had a crack in their windshield, probably about this big. It probably started as a small little chip, but as they continued to drive it for multiple days and then come into the dealership, it had spidered out and essentially equated to almost the full size of their windshield. If they were able to drive their vehicle for about 2 to 3 years, obviously that wouldn't have been identified in the state inspection process. Also too, so realistically, I feel like a lot of consumers understand the laws and the regulations. They're kind of trained to know that all of these things are checked. So most oftentimes they come in understanding that these things are going to be needed in order to ensure the safety of their vehicle, and to also maintain their vehicle longevity wise. I know there were a couple things that were mentioned too as well that I did want to touch upon: time, money, recalls, hybrids. So essentially, I feel as though, and this is a little bit personal, but a half an hour to an hour of my time annually to ensure my safety and peace of mind is essentially nothing. Dollars wise, so most vehicles that are purchased at a dealership actually get free state inspections for the lifetime of their vehicle. I know my dealership personally has adopted that trait. I know Grouponi also has that trait. So once again, a lot of dealerships actually give free annual inspections for the lifetime of that car. So that really takes cost off the table. You don't really have to worry about that $50 annual fee to have that state inspection done. Also, with hybrid vehicles, when we think about it, brakes, tires, and wiper blades are the most common items that fail state inspection. And hybrid vehicles do still have those three components. So they do still have tires, they do still have brakes, and they do still have wiper blades. So obviously, the inspection process, I feel personally, would still be very important on hybrid vehicles too, as well. I think that sums up what I have to say. I would just open the
Thank you.
table to you folks if you have any
so much.
questions.
Any questions? Yes, Senator.
Thank you, and thank you for taking my question. You actually brought up an interesting subject, the glass on the vehicle. So let's say I bought a brand new car looking at this inspection program, and I don't need to get it registered for 36 months. If I have that little crack the first day I buy the car and it spider webs across the whole windshield, and I can barely see out of the car, technically under this, could I still drive that car for 2 years?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any others? Yeah, Senator Turner.
Thank you, and thank you for your testimony. I guess the question I have, and it came up in an earlier testimony, that there are a lot of garages or a lot of dealerships that upsell. So they, yes, they do the inspection, but then they say you've got this wrong and that wrong. Would you say that that's the norm, or is it unusual, or that there are people, dealerships, or say it's the hometown mechanic, that actually take advantage of people when they come in to have their inspection?
So obviously there's a lot of personal that could go into that answer, if that makes sense. I think professionally speaking, there are instances where vehicles might fail inspection. I actually have a couple examples in my folder. One of which I can recall by memory. We had a 2023 Volkswagen Atlas that failed for state inspection at 6,000 miles due to brakes. Unfortunately, that wouldn't be something that was covered under warranty, but we actually stepped up as a dealership and allowed for a goodwill gesture to occur. We actually did a 50-50 split with the customer, so the customer took ownership of 50%, and then we actually had the manufacturer take ownership of the other 50%. Oftentimes, too, even when there's no goodwill through the manufacturer, we might even step up as a dealership and help keep that customer whole through that point in time. So, like I said, I feel like there's a lot of opinion or, personal effect on that. But professionally speaking, I feel like it could go both ways. I mean, personally, my dealership and me as a manager and as a leader, I stand on good merit. So, depending on the relationship or essentially the relationship that we have with the customer, like I said, we might step up and try to keep them whole through something like that. Of course, all of those things are out of our control, but we do what feels right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Another question from Senator Fenton.
I want to follow up on my colleague Senator Gendro. So if my car fails inspection at your workplace, do I have to get the work done there?
You do not. Essentially, I'm providing you with free information, so you could do what you would please with that.
Follow up so I could get a second opinion somewhere else, maybe. And do this.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
If it's your car, it's going to be your dealership. Oh, sorry. Shopping around, are we? Thank you so much for being here. Mike Segan. He had to leave? Yeah, I thought didn't. Oh, dear. Fine. Thank you. I hope, please tell him I hope all is well. Okay. Thank you. So you'll be up after Tom. Tom, at last.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair.
Oh, you got to turn it back on. Yeah.
We swapped today.
Yeah, good afternoon, Chairman Waters and Vice Chairman Ricciardi and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Tom Praisall. I'm here today representing Enterprise Mobility, who operates Enterprise Rent-A-Car, National Car Rental, and Alamo Rent-A-Car through a network of over 30 locations, and in the last 12 months have operated approximately 3,500 rental cars and trucks in their fleet in New Hampshire. So rental cars are in service and transient vehicles and may be located anywhere the consumer takes them. When subsequent inspections are required, the vehicle must be located, taken away from the consumer, and taken out of service. I want to begin by stating that Enterprise has a long history of supporting safe drivers and safe roads and safe vehicles. However, we think that this is a fair and minor change to the inspection program, and we would ask the committee to support it. If you look at what other states require, which has been brought up a number of times, I thought, to Senator Fenton's point, we should look close to home. And if you look at the state of Rhode Island, the state of Rhode Island has almost this exact same law in that they provide an exemption for brand new vehicles for 2 years. At which point they then need an annual inspection and emissions test moving forward. And again, that's only for new vehicles. It's not for pre-owned. When you look at the state of Connecticut, the Connecticut law indicates that an inspection on a new car is not needed for the first 4 years. At year 4, Connecticut requires an emissions inspection only. The legislation before you does not go that far and instead just keeps it similar to Rhode Island, 2 years for a brand new vehicle based on the model year. And you heard some information about data, and I did provide you with some data that came from the Division of Motor Vehicles and through the Gordon Darby program, which I'm assuming that they will also provide you. And so this data shows the total number of inspections and the fail rates of inspections from model year vehicles 2018 through 2023. To look at a snapshot of what, say this bill would do, I figured it would make sense to go through some of the numbers for model year 2022 vehicles. So for the first inspection, you'll see 78,156 vehicles received an inspection, and the total number that failed that inspection was 264, or 0.34%. Of the 264 that failed for their first inspection, the majority were for glass, which, according to the Department of Safety's rules, and that is Safe C 3217, glass can refer to anything from chipped glass to tinting to malfunctioning window mechanisms. So, keeping with the 2022 model, we can look at the second inspection. 75,049 vehicles were inspected in the second year. Of the approximately 75,000 vehicles, 1,154, or 1.5%, failed for safety. Of those that failed, less than half of the 350 of those fails were due to tires. I think when talking about this bill, which I think has been mentioned a number of times, it's important to talk about the manufacturer warranty. So as somebody who just recently purchased last year a new vehicle, it was a Jeep, I'm sorry, Senator Fenton, but that's, the family car. I brought it in recently for its 1-year inspection. And I had back in January a light come on, or a notice on my new car that said that my night vision was unavailable. And night vision is this cool feature that basically sends a spotlight out to the side of the road if there's a cat or other animal that might scurry across the roadway. So I said, okay, well, it's under warranty. I'm going to call and I'm going to make an appointment. So I called my dealer and I said, hey, I'm calling in March because my inspection is in April. I'd like to set up an appointment to get this covered under warranty as well as my inspection at the same time. And I was told that I needed to make 2 different appointments. And as we all know, during this time of the year before the legislature, that's a significant time and expense, whereas it would have been nice to just make 1 appointment to get that covered under warranty. So I think also we should look at, this really isn't asking for too much. So currently, as was mentioned, you can have a car inspected and the inspection's good for up to 16 months. This would go to 24 months. It's only an additional 8 months. I understand that there's ways that folks can play around with the numbers and say it can go up to 36, but I think for the vast majority of folks, it would be 24 months. I also think that, currently in statute, we allow for vehicles that are 40 years and older, so say 1984, they can be inspected, and that inspection's good for 2 years. They're considered antiques. And I am having a hard time recognizing that a 40-year-old vehicle is safer on the road for 2 years than a brand new vehicle. However, having said all of that, I've heard the concerns from the folks behind me in the House, and I know we've had some meetings with interested parties. And as a result, I've taken the liberty of drafting what I think is a fair and appropriate compromise. We heard from the prime sponsor, and I've provided you with a copy of that. We heard from the prime sponsor that the significant issue affecting him and his constituent was purchasing a vehicle that was outside of the 16-month window, and as a result, after 7 months, needed to get an inspection. I think, as was mentioned by him, decoupling the inspection from the birth month and moving it to time of purchase would provide that individual with a full 12 months of their inspection. I think that would solve his issue, and the amendment before you keeps that as an annual inspection. Does not go to 24 months, keeps it at 12. And then in regard to the exemptions for brand new cars, that bill before you, or the amendment before you does have language that would allow for a 2-year exemption for new vehicles owned by a corporation as the first owner and with more than 25 vehicles in its fleet. You know, a lot's been mentioned about rental cars, so I figured I would give you a little bit of information about what my client does. And they have indicated to me that the average number of vehicles traveled through a rental car per year is a little under 25,000. However, when we're talking about inspections, and I think someone previously mentioned that the car is being looked at a number of times throughout the year, and that's 100% accurate. Enterprise does change their tires when the tread depth is at 4 to 30 seconds of an inch, and that is inspected at the return of the rental, at cleaning, at the inspection, and at the start of every rental. So I think that, and also the most important part to alleviate DES's concerns, the proposed amendment before you would require rules to be written and an amendment submitted to the SIP by DES for approval. And that section dealing with the exemption for motor vehicles by a corporation of more than 25 vehicles, that would not go into effect until such amendment is approved by the EPA, which I think was mentioned was probably about 18 months. So having said all of that, I think it's a fair compromise. I'm happy to answer any questions I may be able to. However, if I can't, I'm always willing to work with the committee and get information that you may want. And I'm also willing to work with other stakeholders and massage the language as needed.
I'll start out. So on what you've given us here on page 2, it seems to me the heart of it is those lines 20 to 23.
That's the part I'm most interested in, yes.
Yeah. And so it is going to be inspected upon purchase.
That's the language. That's
In this state or for the fleet vehicles in other states?
so as far as from a licensed dealer, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
This would only refer to New Hampshire
Okay.
vehicles.
All right. So it would be inspected
The language there says shall be inspected upon purchase.
upon
Yes,
purchase. So it gets a sticker then. And then it's 2 years till it gets the next sticker
correct.
for those vehicles.
Correct.
Let me just make sure. And then if we can go back up to on the first page to 17, 18. So you purchase, inspected, and then 1 year for the month of inspection, it gets inspected again.
Correct. And I'd like to address the language relative to the decoupling.
Yeah.
That mirrors language that was introduced by Deputy Speaker Smith in 2022.
I remember that. Okay. Questions from members of the committee? All right. Let me just comment, Tom, because there's been so much discussion about this.
Sure.
We have to exec this bill today.
Understood.
And I think we may be able to take an action that would give until we meet a week from Thursday for continuing discussion, but it would be, if we're going to be able to do anything, it would be because everybody came to us and said, we're happy.
Yeah.
Okay, so just wanted to say it.
One final Bradley special.
There we are. Maybe, who knows? So no other questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for waiting. I know.
Oh, yeah.
And Roger, finally. It's good to see Dover well represented today. Are there any others signed up on other sheets? This is it? Okay.
I have some statistics here. You guys want to pass them around? Yeah. I'm Roger Grew. I'm retired auto dealer with 48 years under my belt of doing this. I'm both motorcycle and a car dealer. The statistics I gave you go to the fact that speeding in New Hampshire has increased dramatically over the last 4 years. Accident rates have increased. And this bill, if it were to pass, would only help to multiply those fatalities, because you've got vehicles that are being pushed to faster and faster speeds, and those speeds are significantly over what we were doing pre-pandemic. All right. New Hampshire is 7th in the country, 7th statistically in the country in fatalities related to speed. But if you then take and you add brake, suspension, and tire problems, we're going to have even more fatalities. Some of these tickets they're handing out, there was a woman, was it yesterday, the day before, on 101, 116 miles an hour in a Tahoe with their 2 little kids unbelted in the back seat. I mean, this stuff happens all the time. Talk to some of the troopers. I mean, they don't even write tickets below 80 anymore. So the issue is, as I see it, is the fact we see cars all the time coming in the shop that were in need of suspension, brake, and tires. All right, those people aren't going to come in for 24 to 35 months. We have a lot of commuters in the state that rack up 30,000 miles a year, so they could easily have 60,000 miles on their cars. Tires, as some of the other speakers have spoken to, wear out much faster now than they used to because of a change in compound, lower profile. You buy yourself an Audi or a BMW or something like that, you're going to be putting tires on at 15 to 20,000 miles. All right? Now, not everybody pays attention to their tires, but those cars are quite capable of going over 100 miles an hour. Tires on EVs and hybrids wear out 30 to 35% faster than tires on internal combustion vehicles because of what they call regenerative braking. The tires are working in both directions. They're working to accelerate the car, and they're working to de-accelerate the car. And as such, you know, you might have a new Tesla with 25,000 miles and you need tires, and you don't know it because you're one of these people who just puts the key or the fob in and never pays attention to the car. So that's it as far as, you know, those safety items related to speeding. The other stuff that Mike Sejan was going to talk to was the service manager at Dover Honda. I was there at the presentation he gave. You were there too, Senator. Mike had been maintaining analysis of vehicles coming in to Dover Honda, which is a busy store, that would not pass inspection in the first year or two because of tire or brake problems. I mean, people that rack up some miles. But you're opening Pandora's box here and allowing people to rack up tremendous amount of mileage without ever getting looked at. Now, some of the dealers will tell you that if you do away with inspection, it's no loss of revenue to them. Their flat rate technicians are already buried in work. I mean, it's just going to be more work they do. And oh, by the way, it's going to be more complicated because now the car is broken because they didn't catch it in time. So I can get you Mike's info if you want it. I think you were presented stuff at the meeting we had at Dover. But this is the same story I'm hearing from other service managers, that these cars are coming in, people don't even realize they need tires. And, oh, oil? I'm supposed to change oil? You know, I mean, you know, not every customer is that focused on maintaining their car. Right? That's all I have. If there's any questions or.
Well, thank you so much. And any questions for Roger?
Oh, and by the way, as the former chair of the Port Authority, I will tell you that we bring in, on average, in excess of 500,000 tons of road salt a year.
Yeah, we know.
And so if you're wondering where the corrosion is coming from, I will tell you where it's coming from. All right, thank you.
Thank you. And I had a number of other people who had signed up, but did not say they wish to speak. So is there anyone else who, please come forward? Yeah. Thank you. I would have called you earlier if I'd known you wanted to speak,
Oh,
but here
that's,
you are.
oh,
Okay.
that's okay.
Yeah.
And I apologize for not having that answer for you before, Senator. But yes, motorcycles would be a part of this because they
I
are
thought so,
considered.
but thank you for clarifying.
Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Janet Bouchard, and I'm the Deputy Director of the DMV here in New Hampshire. Director Marasco wish he could be here, but he was across the street at another issue. I'll just speak a little bit and make a couple points, and then I'll turn it over to Lieutenant O'Leary. So at the DMV, we work closely with the New Hampshire State Police and Troop G on these issues. What we feel, what the state has now with the inspection program is working, so we don't feel a need to change it. We feel minimal complaints on the inspection process. I also brought today a copy of the VIR, which is the Vehicle Inspection Report. It has been mentioned a few times today. And I wasn't going to mention where the recalls is, but you can see it. If their vehicle does have a recall, it'll be listed on here. Over the past probably 6 months, I've worked closely with Lieutenant O'Leary on revising this VIR to make it easier if to field consumer complaints. We were concerned that it was confusing because there was 3 numbers listed at the top if the consumer was concerned with their inspection or with the service they received. So we worked to revise that. And now at the bottom, there's a line that says concerns or questions regarding the state inspection or the practices of the inspection station may be referred to the New Hampshire Department of Safety, Division of State Police, Troop G, and then their phone number and email. So they're willing to field all those. So now we know that all the complaints, if there are any, go one source, and we can deal with them from that. We did look in 2023 out of 1,576,000 state inspections that were performed. There was only 55 consumer complaints that the DMV received. So we don't see that there's a problem there. Also, as I said, we feel that the dealers are very transparent. Director Marasco was able to participate in a state inspection over in Grapponi, and they showed him how they actually videotape the inspections now, and they'll provide photographs. And so they're very transparent with the consumers to let them know what the problems may be on their cars. So that's our stance at the DMV, is we're opposed to this bill because we feel it's working successfully now.
Lieutenant, and again, I'm sorry, I didn't know you wanted to speak.
No, I probably did not
Thanks
fill that
for-
out properly,
thanks for your
sir, so
patience, Lieutenant.
apologize. Thank you. So yes, Lieutenant O'Leary from Troop G, we oversee the we monitor the dealer inspection, as you're aware. Our role here, as it relates to law enforcement, the inspection sticker has become more of a tool that's valuable to us over the past few years as our depletion in resources begin in law enforcement. We've seen statewide. We truly rely on that inspection sticker to verify that these vehicles are safe for the roadway, where, one point in time, we might have more time to be able to enforce these equipment violations. Now we have to prioritize, the calls that we're going to, and, this may not fall on top of the radar on any given day. So the inspection sticker right out of the gate is very important for us because it does verify that that vehicle is safe for the roadway. We spoke earlier about recalls and the enhancements in vehicle technology to include the EV vehicles and how the weight of those vehicles put more additional strain on wear components to include tires and suspension items. We heard how Connecticut and Rhode Island have made changes to their programs. However, those changes haven't been in effect long enough to be able to determine what is this new technology? How are these EV vehicles? What's happening to these vehicles, if anything? And how can we be better prepared on what wear and tear is happening to these EV vehicles? We just don't know because it's a new technology. And without that data, we're not able to speak that there would be no safety items that would be a problem. One of the things that Alicia brought up earlier was the tag that she spoke about on her car, putting that on her vehicle and how it delaminated. Another aspect of the safety inspections that people don't necessarily think of as far as being a safety item is the verification of the vehicle identification number. So at time of registration of a vehicle, that VIN number gets typed in by somebody, whether at a dealership or the town hall, and that VIN number currently is being verified by our qualified state mechanic and state inspection that's conducting the inspection. That's one of the first things that they do. They verify that the VIN number on that registration is the VIN number on the vehicle. And as you can imagine, data entry can skip a few, letters or numbers here and there, and that's why that rule is in place. The mechanic is allowed to make the change of up to 3 digits in that VIN number. Well, why could be a problem item for this type of bill, the VIN number, once it's entered, if it's not caught until 2 years later that it's incorrect, then the consumer could actually be charged more for their registration yearly based on the fact that the model and or the trim level of that vehicle would be reported incorrectly. So if you bought a base model Toyota whatever, it could be registered as the top trim level of that package because of the incorrect reporting of the VIN number. So that's another important role that our mechanics play. As it relates to crash data, I can speak from being on the road and covering crashes, especially in the wintertime here in New England. You see a number of vehicles that are off the roadway. Everybody here usually makes it to work, but we do see a handful of people that don't make it to work. And I guess if you were to drive by those vehicles, the assumption is the fact that they drove too fast that day, because I didn't drive too fast and I made it to work. This person drove fast and went off the roadway as a result. And that's essentially how these crashes are categorized. What isn't done is a full inspection of the vehicle to determine whether or not the tires are bald or not, whether or not there's a worn mechanical component that caused that vehicle to go off the roadway. It's categorized as too fast for road conditions, and we move on to the next. So we might not ever necessarily have the ability to categorize or capture that information as needed as it relates to worn components. As we heard earlier, only 2% of the accidents, only 2%, are contributed to mechanical failure. And I think that shows that our program is working, because if it was not, then that number would be much higher. This bill makes two major assumptions. The first being the responsibilities of owners. The owners are only going to have their vehicles, the oil change, done at a dealer, where the dealer would do it once over their vehicle, and not at like a quick lube type place where the only thing they're going to do is change oil, right? So we have to assume that they're going to have their oil changed at a dealer facility only. And the second assumption is that the vehicle remains safe for an arbitrary period of time, in this case being 24 months. And I guess my question is, at what point does a vehicle no longer become safe? Is it 16 months, 24 months? I think that I don't know the answer to that question. However, we do know that if we change the program as it stands currently, we will inherently increase the risk of ensuring that safe vehicles are on our roadways. That's all I have.
Thank you so much, Lieutenant. Any questions? We're good.
Thank you.
I didn't see anybody else signed up who wanted to speak. Does anybody else want to speak? We've heard a lot. Thank you so much. I'll close the hearing on House Bill 1391, and I bet you want to have some exec session.
You're doing such a good job. Just
No,
finish
all
up
right, I'll
today.
continue.
Finish.
Have a motion to go into exec.
So moved.
Second, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Well, since it's fresh, we have, let me just say, we have about 8 bills that we need to exec today. And then we have others that we must do next week. So why don't we start with House Bill 1391, and if we have a motion, maybe of interim study, I would entertain the motion.
I move interim study on 1391.
Second?
Second.
Second. I think that, as I suggested earlier, interim study, the interesting amendment that we received, and, this is a perennial issue. I remember we passed a bill a few years ago on it in the House. We did it a different way, and the House blocked at a committee conference and so on. And I think that if Tom Praisall continues some discussions and we hear something that could come to us as a floor amendment in 10 days, we'd have time. But otherwise, interim study, I mean, this is a serious issue, and I think we'll particularly for the fleets, we would continue to try to get a solution for next year if one can't come up in the next days or so.
Can I
So
add to that, if you don't mind?
please do.
I did want to say that I have so appreciated all the hard work on both parties, trying to work this out. And, as each of you know, my hope was that we could come up with something that everyone would be reasonably happy. And now we are down to the wire, and it's an FN, and so we had to make this deliberation today. But like my colleague Senator Waters said, if all parties can be agreeable to what's been presented today by Tom, we can maybe do something within this time period of the next 10 days, but we couldn't hold off a decision today due to the fiscal note. So, just want to say thank you for everybody really trying to work collaboratively. And unfortunately, I want everybody to be happy, but it doesn't always work out that way. So thank you.
So, all in favor of interim study?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Is there a motion for consent?
Consent.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
And
I'll take it out.
Senator Fenton can take this one out. Because there's an amendment, why don't we have a motion on House Bill 1202 next? Relative to driveway permits, and did you want to make?
Yeah, I'd like to move on to pass on 1202.
I will second, and
I'd
you
like
have
to-
an amendment.
I do. I'd like to introduce Amendment 1798, which you all should have.
Yes.
Talking with DOT and the concerns, essentially just, working with the prime sponsor and the DOT. They seem to have agreed on this, so, I think it's okay to move forward with.
So we got 60 days. We
65,
got
yeah.
65. Well, we got
Yep.
60 days up top and 65 below, and they say that's manageable.
Correct,
And
Okay.
Madam
may I
Chair.
follow up?
Absolutely.
So I did speak also with the sponsor. I spoke with the Department of Transportation at length, and everyone is in concur and agrees. So I don't see any reason why we can't pass this with amendment.
Well, good work, Madam Chair.
Absolutely.
So, all in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Do I have a motion about to pass as amended?
So moved?
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And do I have a motion for consent?
So moved?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so unless there's objection, why don't I just go up to the top of the list and we have 10:30.
Who do you want to take that
Oh,
out?
excuse me. Why don't you take that one out,
Okay.
Madam Chair?
I'll take that one out.
Yeah, excuse me.
You
Thank
got that, Sophie?
The second on the amendment, I know.
I think I did. Yeah.
So 10:32, let's give everybody a second to catch up here.
While you're looking at it, can I speak to it a little bit?
We'll go right ahead.
So, I did see some merit in what the representative explained about the certificate title exemption. But I wanted to, the department came and they mentioned that it really isn't an issue, that they have an automated system now for getting the titles, and that, it's just $25. And there was some discussion about, possible, fraud if you didn't have the title. I'm up for discussion.
I would echo your concerns. I think that it's $25 for a duplicate title.
So is there a motion?
Move by TL.
I'll second. And any further discussion?
You guys are going too fast. Which bill are you discussing?
Oh, apologies. 1032.
My apologies, Ruth.
Can you point to Ruth? We're going down the list for me.
Yeah, we're
Oh,
just
yeah,
starting
you
at
have
the
this
top.
list right here.
I'm looking for the bill.
Yeah.
1032.
Yes.
Yep, 10:30.
I have a copy of it here if you need it, Ruth. If you need it, Ruth, I have a copy right here. too.
I don't know.
Thank you.
Okay. There it is. Okay.
The short one.
Well, what's the call on this one? 1032.
It's a ITL motion.
And the bill Senator, was, exempting for more vehicles from anything, from getting the title, and it just seemed, it's only $25, and, it seemed to make sense that for, security of ownership and so on, that the 25 wasn't too much to spend, so that's why the motion was to ITL. So, is it? Are we ready to?
We have a second already, I believe.
Yeah, are we ready to vote?
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Move consent.
None, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And who would like to take that one out?
I can take it out.
All right, thank you. So now, we are going on to 1304.
That's a good bill.
And I believe Senator Ward, you introduced this, and everybody was in support.
I move ought to pass.
I'll second that.
Yeah, I did it for the rest of the website. Great.
So it has some, boat fee decal, and where it's displayed is basically what we're looking at.
And the Marine, I'm so sorry, I can't remember his name, but he testified in favor of the bill.
Yeah, nobody opposed. And, so it's a $3 fee.
And the Coast Guard did accept the separating the fees as a solution.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then that's necessity of being able to separate the fees collected regarding Coast Guard rules and so forth. So, are we ready on this one? Everybody ready?
Yep.
Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And,
Move consent.
second? And, any, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And
I'll take it.
Senator Ward, I thought I was gonna ask, and I thought you would.
Okay.
So now the next one would be, House Bill 1329, which is about the fire departments.
Their
And-
special number plates.
Yeah, and,
I move ought to pass. Basically, the municipal police have the MP, so the fire department would then have FP. To indicate that it's, or FM for municipal.
yeah,
Right.
and we got a second on this one?
I'll second that.
Okay, and, gonna cost $28,000 to, one-time cost to implement the change in the system. So
But-
that's why it's an FN bill, and, the
Finance can
will-
review it.
will take a look, but
Right.
that's standard. I mean, we're
Right.
used to that. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Is there a consent motion?
So moved.
Second?
And, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And I could take it out, spread the wealth here.
It's about time.
All right. All right, and then, our next one is 1366. And, we were holding this one, Madam Chair, for a while, and I wasn't sure if there was a reason to continue holding it, or maybe this is one you thought to hold to see what was gonna happen with other bills, or, I mean, that's the only
That's,
note I had on it.
I believe we were wasn't that the one where with the words amendment? Can you check? Remember, we had that little bit of confusion? Do you know? Maybe not. Okay. Then I think we held it because we didn't know what was going to happen with another bill. So I think we're good.
Yeah, and, what it's doing is bumping up negligent operation to a violation, or down to a violation, excuse me. So, and it has a new section on reckless operation. And then, the reckless got your 60 days. And, suspension. And then the bottom there on 15 and 16, covers this new, adds this new section that, you know, that a reference here to the new section that we're adding about reckless operation. So if you're negligent, and now if you're reckless, you're bad.
Okay.
Okay. So, do we have a motion about to pass?
So moved.
In a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Move consent?
Second. And, all in favor of consent?
Aye.
All right. And, any opposed? And Senator Ward, you being the Lakes person, why not? You want to take it out?
Glad to.
All right, thank you very much. Madam Chair, I have a pretty hard stop at 3, so, shall we do the 10-year plan? You wanted to do that today, didn't you?
Do we have the amendment?
Do we have the amendment?
I don't
The final
think so.
version? Okay,
No.
all right, I just want to check,
Yeah.
because now I think, you probably want to wait till next week anyway.
Yeah, on that.
Because it's
because-
being waived.
Yeah,
It's being waived.
that's being
Okay,
waived.
thank
But-
you,
but-
all right.
But we should get this.
Let's continue. We got
Yeah,
this. I
okay.
just wanted to double check on that.
Yeah, we don't have the amendment yet.
All right, good. All right, I just got confused. So 1457 is the next one that we want to, with an FN, we want to get at. Wooden bridges.
I move on to pass.
I bet you do. I second ought to pass. So, yes, this bill damages to our treasured bridges.
Our historic bridges.
Yeah, protect the
Historic
bridges.
Imagine a woody wagon damaging a wooden bridge. All right, now, okay, so, any further discussion? You all set, Ruth?
Yep.
All right, all in favor ought to pass?
Aye.
Any opposed? And,
Move consent.
consent.
Second?
Seconded, and, any discussion? No, there wouldn't be. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Who wants to do it?
I can take it out.
All right, thank you, Senator Fenton. You're just the workheorse today, let me tell you.
I try.
You get star for the day.
Right.
Oh, he always
Good
does.
cookie on the way home.
He's special, you know.
My mom
So,
says.
now we have, we're all special, 1468. And,
I make a motion on ought to pass.
let me,
I second that.
and that's good, but let me have a moment to look at the bill.
Directing the Department of Transportation to develop the Conway Branch Rail Line Master Plan.
All right, and this is from, let's see, and we had one opposer, and why was that?
Because he's in, development for rail.
Oh. Commercial interest,
He
cetera,
wanted the
et cetera.
RFP to go through for the Department of Transportation, which would not enable this
Yeah.
committee to proceed.
Yeah, we ought to proceed, I think, so just wanted to mention it. And so we have a motion, and any further discussion on this one?
No, I think we discussed about them developing it so people can go out for walks
Yeah.
and they can take their bikes out and, yeah.
Do you think we should, after we vote, that maybe it should not go on consent, should be spoken to a bit on the floor, given the nature of the topic?
We're gonna have a lot of bills.
Okay, never mind.
Well,
Never mind.
Okay, all in favor of what to pass?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
And move consent.
Yeah.
Move consent.
Second.
And I haven't taken any out, so I'll take it out.
Oh, well, jeez, you
You skipped me
neglected.
today.
I'm sorry. I thought, you'd just grab the gavel and wrap my knuckles and if you wanted something, you
do
got
that
it.
to
You're
you.
the
I
boss.
couldn't do that to you. We're equal
right.
bosses. That's it.
Now, so I don't know, Madam Chair, whether you want to continue with any of the others in the next few minutes.
I would say yes.
Yeah.
And we have a hard stop at 3, but maybe we could just make next Tuesday a little lighter.
Yeah, so 1083, I thought, was that one you wanted, or what do you want to do?
Well, 1403.
Okay,
1637 even.
yep, I think we could probably do 1354, right?
Which do you want to start with?
How about 1637?
I would move ITL on this, or interim study, I should.
Yeah, yeah.
Second.
Interim study.
Interim study is my motion.
Interim study, I will second. Any further discussion? You got this, Ruth? This is the Eposion, the system's working well, and we had the same DES problem about
Emissions.
this one.
1637 reduces requirements for effluents.
Yeah, I said, just had a lot of problems, and I think interim study makes sense. So any further discussion? No, all in favor of
Aye.
interim study?
Aye.
Aye, any opposed?
Move consent.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
I'll try another one.
I'll take it.
Okay. Now you're not feeling neglected?
I don't feel neglected.
Okay, very good. So what was next, Madam Chair, you thought we might do?
1403. I
Okay,
think we can all, right?
let's give a moment to pull it up here.
And it was relative to temporary waivers.
2024, when are you gonna do that?
Well, that's next week.
That's next week.
Next week. We have an amendment coming. Yeah.
We have one amendment to cover everything, so we need to hold off.
I have a project that needs to be taken care of.
Came to the right committee.
On the 10-year plan?
Yeah, Rich.
If
Yeah.
so, we all set. I'll tell you afterwards.
We gave, remember the letter? The letter,
Yeah,
yeah,
I have a
yeah, the letter.
2-year.
yeah, I think we got it fixed, but we can talk about that. And, Madam Chair, somehow in the mystery of my binder, I don't have 14, oh, wait a minute, I found it, sorry. Okay, so, we have a motion, 1403
Interim
of
study.
interim study. I will second. This one, we had the dealers opposed and Mike Fitzgerald noted the issues about it. Though I do think we're gonna be talking about vehicle emissions and, inspections more next year, but maybe with more clarity. So, any further discussion? All in favor of interim study, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Move consent.
Second.
Second?
All right, all in favor of consent?
Aye.
Aye, any opposed? And,
I'll take it out.
okay, thank you, Senator Dendro.
You're welcome.
And, it seemed to me that 1354 didn't have much
Objection?
objection to it, and a nice thing perhaps to do, so let's turn to that,
The
1354.
testimony was very positive, and it was
Yeah.
relative to special number plates for the surviving spouses of veterans.
Yeah.
It was a kind of a bit of a heart-wrenching,
It sounds like that's a motion, Madam Chair.
I'd say ought to pass.
And I'll second. Mhm. And, any further discussion? This, Ruth, is the, being able to keep the number plate.
I was somewhere else about that.
Yeah, and so what is this? If you're a spouse of a veteran who dies, you get to keep the number plate.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a good
It's a
thing.
nice thing.
It's a good thing. If they remarry, then they gotta
Have
let
to
it go.
return it.
They have to let it go. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Move consent?
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Anybody like to do this in
I'll take
particular?
that one.
Well, thank you. Now you're getting overburdened.
been-
The weight that you are bearing,
Oh.
Madam Chair. All right, and I guess 1083 is the only one left then. You want to look at it? I've got about 2 more minutes if
Okay,
you
and
want to.
then all we'll be dealing with next
That's
Tuesday
right.
is the voting on the 10-year
Then we can
plan.
go out to
But
lunch.
we really weren't ready because we do need
Yeah,
that
we
final
didn't-
amendment.
Very, very efficient.
Good teamwork.
So we had no opposition here. Somebody want to make a motion?
I only gotta see it.
You have to refresh it again.
I know it.
And
I'll make a motion not to pass.
I'll second. So, this is, if you're a surviving owner of a vehicle and joint tenancy with rights to survivorship, you don't have to get a brand new title.
Right.
when you are registering the vehicle. Again, seems fair enough.
There wasn't any objection.
Nope, there was not. And,
And looks fine.
Even if the title is held in the deceased name?
well, I think it's joint,
In both their
Yeah.
names.
It has to be in both names, but it can't be in one.
the surviving owner may continue to register the vehicle without obtaining a new title. Yeah, it's more about titling than.
Yeah.
Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I'll move consent.
Second?
Any further? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And I can take it out, sure.
Okay.
And I think this incredible committee, Sophie, here's the sign-in sheets for the one we heard today.
She needs that. Oh.
And I think, and as long as we're here,
welcome.
just for next week to let people know what we've been up to. The issues that we raised, that we might have wanted some changes to the 10-year plan. We went, thank you, Madam Chair, but we went two directions. Some we thought we could handle by having a letter of commitment from DOT, such as the Charleston Bridge, that they said, yes, we can delay, we can bring a crane in on a barge so that the bridge can stay open. And a letter to that effect, and a couple others, a letter to the effect went out. There's some other things that we're putting in.
Correct.
And a little bit of funding here and there, and then, as courtesy essentially with the Chairman McConkey, who thought that there could be added a little bit of funding for the corridor study money for 153 related to the Route 16 corridor, that he would get a slight addition there. And the idea here, thanks to the chair's work and others, was to have an agreement with the House so that we would not have to go to committee of conference. And it looks like that's what this amendment will do. They understand about Continental Boulevard, so that's coming out. We're going to do a couple of CNG buses, and they have money. They have program money for that, but it's going to be put in here just in case the calendar year slips. We put it in 10-year plans so they can use program money they already have. So there's no additional cost to the 10-year plan because of that one. So that's just a quick summary. Got to get it all drafted up, so we'll have it for next week. But I think, thanks to the chair, we're just, in a great place on it.
It'll be a 2-year delay.
I think, why don't we make sure you get the letter? Okay, but I think it's what the town said fine with what was being proposed.
That was the latest thing I heard today.
Yeah. But if not, why don't you,
The letter you have may not have the exact verbiage of 2 years. You had a meeting today that may have, so maybe we need a revised letter.
yeah, so why don't you check in with Grant?